Hey there, I'm Brent, CEO and lead developer for Lost Abroad. Welcome to part 3 in our Unity Development for Epic Games series. Today, we're going to be going over how to grant stats and achievements using the Connect interface. Alright, so I'm going to assume that you've already set up your stats and achievements in the dev portal for your game in the game services section. I'm going to be looking at the coffee stat that I have set up, and then achievements, the get lost achievement, which is just a basic intro achievement. So let's jump into the EOS SDK component and start importing a few more namespaces. So the two obvious ones are Epic.OnlineServices.stats and then Epic.OnlineServices.achievements. But in order to use these, we need to use the Connect interface as well, which is really going to be anything that has to do with Epic server, so stats and achievements, friends list, etc. Then let's add one more custom variable that's really important to this, which is a product user ID. Now, each Epic account has one account ID, but they have then one product user ID for each game that they have. And this is what's going to be used to interface with the Connect interface. Now, if I go ahead and save this and go into my Unity game, I'm going to get an error because the Auth interface that we already used in part 2 and the Connect interface have some of the same method names. So I'll see here there's an ambiguous reference between Epic.OnlineServices Auth and Epic.OnlineServices Connect. So we have to go in and make a few corrections on this in the login flow. So I'll scroll down, find the login options, and what I need to do is just specify that it is epic.onlineservices.auth.login options, do the same thing for credentials, do the same thing for the login callback info, and then I do it one more time in the login callback info for on login successful. And then once I've done that, then it will clear out the error and I'm good to go. Now that that's fixed, I'm ready to actually get started implementing the Connect interface. Makes sense to do this in the onLogin successful. So I'm going to paste in, I've got to get this ID token from Epic.OnlineServices Auth and run copy ID token to get it. I'm going to then create the Connect interface. And then I start creating some Connect interface login options that use that token value that I just got. So it's got a type of the Epic ID token, and then the token from earlier .value.json web token. And then finally, I can actually run the Connect interface login function using those options. So what I'm going to do next is, if this login is successful, then I definitely want to do a debug of my product user ID, because I can then use that in the development interface later to view and reset my stats while testing, and then still just set the product user ID. Now, a product user ID isn't actually created when a user buys your game. So there might be a case where there's a result code of a failure, but for invalid user. And in this case, you actually just need to create it for them. So if we get this result code of invalid user, then I can create some create user options, just using the token from the callback info, and then run the Connect interface create user function using those options. And if they then successfully create a user, I'll debug that, set the product user ID. Otherwise, I want to check what happened there. And then the last thing I want to do before I'm done here is that this can run asynchronously, so I want to make sure that the scene doesn't change before it's finished. So I'm just going to take my load scene script and then make sure that it runs after those checks for the result code. So I'll go ahead and save that, go back into my game, make sure I'm searching for that connect success debug, and go ahead and press play. So I'll go ahead and allow access, go back into my Unity editor, let it do its thing for login, and then it logs me in, and I've got my debug log with my product user ID for this particular game. And what I want to do is just copy that and save it somewhere for later. Okay, so that's a lot of setup just to get the connect interface, but now we're actually able to get started. First thing, go ahead and clear that out. Let's go into my logged in scene. So I added 2 new buttons here that we're going to use for incrementing the coffee stat and adding the achievement. I haven't actually added any interactions to these yet. I just created the buttons. And then I made sure to move my main menu script to be above that canvas with the buttons, just so that that script is created before the buttons are, and it actually works correctly. So back in my EOS SDK script, I'm going to create a new method called ChangeStat. It'll take a stat name and then an integer for how much it's going to change. And within that, I'm going to create an array of this ingest data object. In my case, for my game, I'm always just updating one stat at a time. You can update multiple, but I'll go ahead and set the stat name and the ingest amount to the parameters that are coming in. I use that to create an ingest stat options object, and it uses a local user ID and a target user ID. So local user ID is the user that's playing the game, and target user ID is who gets the stat. So if it's multiplayer, those might be different, but my game is single player, so they're both just using my own product user ID. And then lastly, I get the stats interface and I run ingest stat off those options, and I'm good to go. Next up, I will make an AddAchievement, which just takes a string of the achievement ID. First things first, gonna instantiate the interface. And then I'm going to create an array of UTF-8 strings with the achievement IDs. And I'll just set the first and only parameter of that to be the achievement ID that I send it. You can, just like stats, do multiple at a time. In my case, I'm always just doing one. And then I can create an unlock achievement options setting, set my user ID, the achievement IDs array that I already set up. And then put in the achievements interface, unlock achievements using those options. I put in some debugs just to confirm, but just running that unlock achievements method typically means that you're good to go. Now, we've set this up to interface with Epic. Now I'm going to go into my main menu script to actually create those scripts that those buttons will generate. So I'll make an add coffee method. It'll take an amount, and then it will just call my change stat on the coffee stat and the amount that I put in. And then a grant into intro achievement method that hits that get lost achievement name. And in my Unity editor, I will attach these to the button clicks. For the add coffee, I'll set it to just one. You can always set it to multiple. And then same thing on the grant intro achievement. And now that this is set up, I can save the scene, go back to my login scene, and go ahead and play it again. This time it actually asked me to log in, so I'll enter my login info. Once I'm logged in, I'll press allow. And then now that I'm in, I can start clicking on these buttons. So I can click on the Add Achievement button, and it will actually just play the interface achievement granted on the top. And then I can click on the increment coffee button. In this case, I'll click on it 3 times. And then if I go back into my dev portal, what I can do is I can search for that product user ID that I got from the debug log earlier to pull up my account. And I can see in my achievements that I got the Get Lost achievement, and that I'm 30% of the way to 10 coffees achievement. And if I look at the stats, I can see on here that the value in the rightmost column is 3. If I go back in and I click on the increment coffee button 7 more times, it will, boom, just give me the coffee 10 achievement as well. So now that this works, if I want, I can go back into this dev portal and I can reset the stats and achievements to test them again. One thing to note is that if you try to reset a stats-based achievement like this, you actually need to reset the stats first. But for just granted achievements like Get Lost, I can hit reset and it gets reset. But for Coffee 10, I need to go to stats, I need to reset the stat, and then I can go back to the achievements, reset that achievement, and then everything's back to 0, and I can go ahead and test it again to my heart's content. There we go. I hope this was useful for you, and you're able to set up epic stats and achievements for your Unity game. In our next video, we'll be going over some advanced auth using the exchange code method, and then let me know in the comments what else you would like to see in this series. See you next time.